A millionaire thought he could replace his pregnant wife in just 48 hours. But what he didn't know was that he wasn't divorcing a woman, he was declaring war on a queen. Welcome to Mr. Robert Stories. If you love gripping tales of love, betrayal, revenge, and shocking twists, you've just found your new home. Here, every story will pull you in, make your heart race, and leave you guessing until the very last word. Now, here's the deal. Watch till the end because the best surprises are always saved for last. And if you enjoy the story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss another unforgettable story. Every story on Mr. Robert Stories isn't just something you watch, it's something you feel, something that stays with you long after the video ends. So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. Trust me, you're going to want to watch every second. This is Mr. Robert Stories, where every story is an experience. The sound of waves crashing against the rocks below the Malibu cliffs should have been calming, a reminder of wealth and serenity. Instead, it clashed with the sight of divorce papers spread across the tempered glass dining table like weapons. The California sunlight streamed through the massive windows of the Walker estate, illuminating the sharp legal print that promised to end a marriage built on appearances, power, and betrayal. Danielle Carter-Walker stood there, her body still as a statue. At 35, she was the kind of woman who drew attention not only because of her beauty, but because of the authority that radiated from her presence. Her rich ebony skin glowed under the morning light, her natural hair swept into an elegant crown that accentuated her strong cheekbones. She had not become one of the most respected strategy consultants in New York and Los Angeles by chance. She had built herself piece by piece, forged by intelligence, ambition, and discipline. And now, standing 3 months pregnant, she should have been the vulnerable one. She should have been trembling. But she wasn't. Instead, a quiet fire lit her gaze. The man who had once begged for her insight now believed he could discard her like an old contract. The irony was almost amusing. 48 hours, she murmured under her breath, lifting the top page of the divorce packet. Her almond-shaped eyes skimmed over each clause with the same precision she once applied to multi-billion-dollar mergers. Not one line surprised her. Ethan had been careless lately, too many late-night absences, too many lies he couldn't even keep straight. He thought his betrayal was invisible, but Danielle had seen it coming long before he found the courage to put pen to paper. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, but it wasn't soft. It was sharp, the kind of smile that should have made Ethan nervous if he had been there to witness it. The sound of heels clicking against hardwood interrupted her thoughts. From the master suite emerged Sophie Reed, 28, blonde, draped in a silk robe that did not belong to her. Danielle's robe. She walked with an air of victory, as if she had conquered some great battle, her artificial beauty shining in the morning glow. "Good morning," Sophie said with syrupy sweetness, her tone deliberately patronizing. "I trust you've processed things?" Danielle turned her head slowly, her gaze locking onto the younger woman with the calm intensity of a predator sizing up its prey. There was no trembling, no rage, no tears. Only calculation. "Processed." Danielle's voice was smooth, steady. "My dear, what you mistake for surrender is actually silence. And silence is never permanent." For a brief moment, Sophie's confidence wavered. But then she recovered, plastering on a grin as if she had won some unshakable prize. "There's no need to make this harder than it has to be. Ethan and we're simply moving forward with our lives." Danielle let out a low, almost musical laugh. It wasn't bitter, and it wasn't hysterical. It was deliberate. "Moving forward," she echoed, returning her attention to the papers. "Interesting choice of words. I wonder if you even realize the ground beneath you is quicksand." Before Sophie could reply, a new presence entered the room. Ethan Walker, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a casual cashmere sweater that screamed wealth. His sandy brown hair was tousled from sleep, and his pale blue eyes held a forced calm that didn't quite mask the tension in his jaw. At 41, Ethan still carried the boyish charm that had once drawn Danielle to him, but time had revealed the truth. He was a man accustomed to inheriting advantages, not building them. His father's connections had birthed his company, while Danielle's strategies had grown it. Yet, in his mind, success was his alone. Danielle, Ethan began, his voice carrying the condescending patience of a man who believed he was in control. I know this is sudden. But you and I both know our marriage has been deteriorating for years. Sophie and I. Spare me, Danielle cut in sharply, her tone quiet but slicing through the air like a blade. She turned toward him fully now, shoulders back, posture regal. Do you think I wasn't watching? Do you honestly believe your little escapades went unnoticed? 4 months of sloppy lies, unexplained business trips, mysterious late meetings. You insulted my intelligence long before you insulted my marriage. Ethan's jaw tightened, his eyes flickering toward Sophie as if searching for reassurance. Sophie shifted uneasily, suddenly less comfortable in Danielle's robe. Danielle walked slowly around the dining table, her hand brushing the divorce papers as if they were nothing more than dust. Her heels clicked against the polished oak floors, each step deliberate, echoing in the cavernous room. You want me out in 48 hours? She asked softly, stopping just inches from him. Ethan, you've forgotten who you married. You've forgotten the difference between a pawn and a queen. Ethan swallowed, but forced a smirk. Danielle, this doesn't have to be dramatic. You'll be compensated fairly. The prenup. Danielle tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Compensated? She let the word linger in the air, dripping with disdain. Then she pulled her phone from the table and scrolled through her contacts. Without breaking eye contact with her husband, she pressed a button. Veronica, she said into the receiver. We're activating full protocol. Launch the financial audit immediately. Flag the offshore accounts. And yes, initiate the read background check. I want the preliminary findings within the hour. Sophie's face drained of color. Ethan stiffened, his forced calm evaporating. Danielle, he said, his voice cracking despite his attempt to stay firm. What are you doing? What I've always done, she answered smoothly. Thinking ahead. Planning for outcomes while you chase illusions. You see, Ethan, you mistook silence for ignorance. But I've been preparing for this day for months. She set the phone down and slid into one of the high-backed chairs at the table, crossing her legs with effortless grace. Do you know what I find most fascinating? She asked, her voice deceptively calm. How easy it is for men like you to believe you're invincible. You forget the very foundation of your empire rests on the work of others. My work. My connections. My vision. Without me, Ethan, you're not a titan. You're just another spoiled man fumbling in the dark. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Outside, the Pacific shimmered, endless and beautiful. Inside, the walls seemed to close in on Ethan and Sophie. Danielle's quiet composure was more terrifying than any outburst could have been. Finally, Sophie whispered, her bravado crumbling, You can't ruin him. You wouldn't. Danielle's eyes shifted to her, steady and cold. You think betrayal makes me weak. It doesn't. It sharpens me. And you, Sophie, you haven't stolen a prize. You've inherited a disaster. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came. His confident posture collapsed, his shoulders heavy, his gaze darting anywhere but Danielle's piercing eyes. Danielle stood, smoothing the folds of her silk blouse as though concluding a boardroom presentation. You gave me 48 hours, Ethan, she said softly, almost kindly. Then her smile hardened, lethal in its brilliance. You'll soon learn, I only need 24. Friday evening draped Malibu in a golden haze, the setting sun painting the ocean in streaks of crimson and amber. Atop the cliff, the Walker mansion stood in eerie silence. What should have been the proud fortress of a successful entrepreneur now felt more like a crumbling citadel. Inside, the walls no longer whispered of privilege, they trembled with the quiet dread of impending collapse. In the cavernous master closet, Danielle Carter-Walker stood poised like a general preparing for battle. Around her, racks of designer gowns, tailored suits, and rows of shoes gleamed under recessed lighting. But she didn't touch them with nostalgia. Every garment she selected was deliberate, symbolic. She wasn't packing like a woman leaving her home, she was curating the weapons of her next conquest. She reached for the black Alexander McQueen blazer she had worn the day she secured her first international client, folding it with care into a leather trunk. Then the deep crimson heels that had carried her across boardrooms where billion-dollar deals were sealed. Each choice wasn't about comfort, it was about image, about reclaiming the identity Ethan had tried to strip from her. On the velvet stool near the vanity, a pair of pearl earrings rested inside their box. Danielle clasped them onto her ears, gazing into the mirror. She saw not a betrayed wife, not even a pregnant woman. She saw a sovereign, unshaken and sharp, ready to walk out of the ashes with her crown intact. Mrs. Walker, a voice said gently from the doorway. It was Elena Morales, the housekeeper who had worked in the mansion for nearly a decade. Her brown eyes shimmered with quiet respect. She had seen Danielle's transformation over the past 2 days, from stunned silence to razor-edged precision. Where Ethan floundered, Danielle rose. "The cars are ready," Elena reported. "And the movers have secured all 20 crates of files in the lead vehicle." Danielle gave a single nod, adjusting the cuffs of her blouse. "Thank you, Elena. You've been more loyal to me in 2 days than my husband has in 7 years. I won't forget it." Elena bowed her head slightly, as though acknowledging royalty. "It has been an honor to serve you." The rhythmic sound of luggage wheels rolling across marble echoed through the mansion like a procession. Staff members moved with silent efficiency, each one treating Danielle not as a departing tenant, but as a leader making a ceremonial exit. No one looked at Ethan. No one acknowledged Sophie. Their authority had evaporated. Sophie appeared in the hallway, draped in a silk kimono she had scavenged from Danielle's collection. The younger woman leaned against the wall, her face pale, her eyes darting nervously. She tried to mask her fear with fake poise. "You're really leaving, then?" Sophie asked, her voice brittle. I thought maybe you'd try to fight for him." Danielle stopped, studying her with a mixture of pity and contempt. "Fight for him," she repeated softly, the words laced with mockery. "Sophie, queens don't fight over pawns. They outmaneuver them." Sophie's bravado cracked, her throat tightening. "You think you've won, but once you're gone, Ethan and I will inherit a graveyard," Danielle interrupted, her gaze slicing through Sophie's illusions. "Enjoy it while it lasts. But when the dust settles, you'll realize you didn't step into a love story. You stepped into a battlefield. And you're standing on the wrong side." Her words lingered in the air like smoke, filling the hallway with an invisible chill. Moments later, Ethan Walker appeared, his once pristine composure disintegrating after 48 hours of frantic damage control. His normally sharp suits were replaced with a wrinkled shirt, his hair unkempt, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights spent trying to secure failing deals and calm anxious investors. "Then, wait," he said, his voice hoarse. Let's talk. We don't have to make this hostile. We can find an arrangement." Danielle turned slowly, every movement deliberate, regal. She studied him the way a chess master studies a cornered opponent. "An arrangement?" Her tone was silk wrapped around steel. "Ethan, arrangements are for equals. And you lost that privilege the moment you mistook betrayal for power." He clenched his fists, desperation cracking his voice. "The Malibu property, the yacht, the art, your name isn't on any of it. You can't touch them." Danielle's smile was icy, her pearl earrings glinting in the chandelier light. "Ownership is a fragile thing, Ethan. When the courts prove the money behind your acquisitions came from fraud, when the federal auditors seize your assets, tell me, what will you have left? Not the house. Not the accounts. Not even the reputation that made people take your calls." Sophie's breath hitched, color draining from her face. "Fraud," she whispered, turning to Ethan. "What is she talking about?" Danielle didn't wait for his stammering denial. 7 years of documentation, she said evenly. Every transfer, every concealed account, every conversation where you admitted what you did. And now, every box of evidence is already beyond your reach. Tell me, Ethan, how does it feel to realize you never once outsmarted me? Ethan's lips moved, but no sound came out. His arrogance, the very core of his identity, had cracked under her precision. Danielle lifted her final suitcase, snapping it shut with a sound that echoed like a gavel striking judgment. "Elena, has everything been loaded?" "Yes, Mrs. Walker," Elena replied, her voice steady. All files, jewelry cases, and personal archives are secured. Good. Danielle smoothed the sleeve of her blazer, then walked down the hallway. Each step echoed like the march of inevitability. Ethan and Sophie stood frozen, powerless spectators to her coronation. The elevator doors opened to the grand marble lobby. To Danielle's surprise, a small crowd had gathered, neighbors, the building manager, even the doorman. They stood silently, respectfully, as though attending a state procession. Mrs. Patel from the estate next door stepped forward, her tone formal. "We wanted to tell you, Mrs. Walker, your strength has not gone unnoticed. You've carried yourself with dignity in the face of humiliation. It has inspired us all." Danielle inclined her head graciously, her lips curving into her first genuine smile in days. "Thank you. Dignity is the one currency betrayal can't bankrupt." Another neighbor, a venture capitalist who had once attended Ethan's galas, leaned closer. "If you ever need introductions, recommendations, partnerships, my network is open to you. Some of us prefer investing in vision, not vanity." Noted, Danielle replied warmly, though her mind was already 3 steps ahead. Allies were revealing themselves. Her kingdom was not shrinking, it was expanding. Outside, a black Rolls-Royce Cullinan waited, engine humming softly, gleaming like a royal carriage beneath the dimming sun. The driver, a distinguished older man named James, bowed slightly as he opened the rear door. "Where to, Mrs. Walker?" Danielle glanced over her shoulder one final time. Through the glass walls of the mansion, she saw Ethan and Sophie silhouetted against the ocean backdrop, 2 fragile figures watching their empire slip away. They had expected her to crumble, to beg. Instead, they were witnessing her ascension. "To the Beverly Hills Hotel," she instructed smoothly, sliding into the plush leather seat. "Presidential suite." As the Rolls pulled away from the cliffside, Danielle placed a hand on her abdomen. Her child would never know a mother who had been broken. No, this child would inherit the legacy of a woman who turned betrayal into empire. Her phone buzzed. She answered calmly. "Veronica?" "Yes. Phase 1 is complete. Initiate full disclosure protocols first thing Monday morning. Every file, every recording, every detail. And make sure the press is ready. This story won't just end Ethan Walker's career, it will crown mine." The city lights began to glitter against the night sky, and Danielle allowed herself a rare moment of stillness. She was not leaving as a discarded wife. She was leaving as something far greater, a queen on the verge of conquest. The presidential suite at the Beverly Hills Hotel glowed with understated luxury, cream-colored walls, crystal chandeliers, and a sweeping view of Los Angeles that shimmered like a sea of stars. But Danielle Carter-Walker wasn't admiring the decor. Her laptop was open across the marble desk, a fortress of files and encrypted folders illuminating her sharp features in the dim light. 3 days had passed since she'd left the Malibu estate. 3 days since she'd walked out of her marriage not as a victim, but as a sovereign ready for war. Ethan Walker had given her 48 hours to disappear. Instead, she had used them to ensure he would never recover. A knock sounded at the door. Danielle didn't flinch. "Enter." The door opened to reveal Veronica Hill, her longtime ally and perhaps the most feared divorce attorney on the West Coast. Tall, poised, with hair pulled into a sleek bun and glasses perched on the edge of her nose, Veronica exuded the kind of quiet dominance that made even billionaires sweat. She carried a slim leather folder, which she set carefully on the desk. "Phase 1 results," Veronica said, sliding the documents toward Danielle. "Our team traced all of Ethan's offshore accounts. The shell corporations, the Cayman transfers, the Luxembourg holding companies, they are all linked. Fraudulent. And the best part?" A small, knowing smile tugged at her lips. "The IRS has no record of any of it." Danielle leaned back in her chair, fingertips steepled. Her eyes glimmered with satisfaction. "So the emperor truly has no clothes." Veronica's smile widened. "Exactly. And the moment we push these findings, federal prosecutors won't just circle. They'll pounce." Danielle rose from her chair, pacing toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city below seemed endless, alive with energy. Somewhere out there, Ethan was scrambling, calling lawyers, begging investors, trying to patch leaks in a ship that was already sinking. She allowed herself a slow breath, savoring the inevitability of his downfall. "Timing is everything," she murmured. "We don't strike all at once. We build pressure. We make him watch as the walls close in." Veronica arched an eyebrow. "You want a slow bleed?" Danielle turned, her expression calm but lethal. "I want him to feel the weight of every decision he made against me. One press leak here, one investor spook there. He'll collapse not from one blow, but from 1,000 cuts." The phone on the desk buzzed. Danielle answered, her tone cool. "Mrs. Walker," came the voice of James, her driver. "Mr. Ramirez from the Financial Times is waiting in the lobby. Shall I bring him up?" "Yes," Danielle said smoothly. "Escort him directly." Veronica's eyes gleamed with understanding. "Media strategy." Danielle smiled faintly. "Of course. Ethan built his reputation on the illusion of genius. Let's see how the press responds when the mask is ripped off." Minutes later, Carlos Ramirez, an investigative journalist known for exposing corporate scandals, entered the suite. His notepad was ready, his expression sharp. He had chased stories that toppled CEOs before, but something in Danielle's presence told him this one would eclipse them all. "You said you had information," Carlos began, his tone cautious. "Enough to expose Ethan Walker?" Danielle didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gestured toward the files Veronica had organized on the desk. Bank records, email transcripts, coded transactions, all meticulously prepared. She let Carlos skim a few pages, watching the widening of his eyes as the implications sank in. This is massive," he whispered. "Insider trading. Tax evasion. Investor fraud. If half of this is verified." "It's all verified," Danielle interrupted, her voice steady. "Cross-checked, time-stamped, recorded. Every lie Ethan thought was hidden, I've been collecting it for years." Carlos looked up, visibly stunned. "Why come forward now? Why not earlier?" Danielle's gaze sharpened. "Because power is not taken in haste. It's taken at the precise moment your opponent is most vulnerable. Ethan believes he's rid of me. By Monday, he'll realize I was never his weakness, I was his reckoning." The journalist leaned back, a mix of awe and unease in his expression. "You know this will destroy him completely." Danielle's lips curved into a controlled smile. "That's the point." Veronica stepped forward, sliding a confidentiality agreement across the desk. "You'll release what we approve, when we approve it. No sooner. If you play by our rules, this story will define your career." Carlos signed without hesitation. The game had officially widened. As the evening deepened, Danielle dismissed them both with a nod. Left alone, she poured herself a glass of sparkling water and moved onto the balcony. The warm California breeze lifted her hair as she gazed out over the city. Somewhere across town, Ethan was likely pacing in his office, Sophie at his side, both trying to cling to an empire already rotting from within. Her phone buzzed again. This time, the caller ID displayed a familiar name, Marcus Reed, Sophie's older brother, a venture capitalist with his own reputation to protect. Danielle let the call ring twice before answering. "Danielle," Marcus said quickly, his voice laced with urgency. "We need to talk. Sophie doesn't know I'm calling, but this situation, it's spiraling. Ethan's collapse will drag her down too." Danielle tilted her head, her tone measured. "So now you realize your sister is standing on sinking ground." "I'm asking you," Marcus said, his voice almost pleading. "Don't take her with him. She's naive, not malicious." Danielle's silence stretched long enough to make him uncomfortable. Finally, she spoke. "Navit is not a shield, Marcus. Choices have consequences. Your sister chose to wear my crown while I was still alive to defend it. Then please." She cut the line, her expression unreadable. Sophie wasn't her concern. Collateral damage was inevitable. Ethan had set the stage, Sophie had played along. Now they both would reap the harvest. Back inside, Danielle organized her next moves. Tomorrow would bring investor calls, discreet meetings with regulators, and a carefully timed leak to the Wall Street Journal. Every step was precise, a symphony of strategy. And yet, as she closed her laptop for the night, Danielle placed her hand gently against her abdomen. Beneath the armor, beneath the razor-sharp tactics, lived her truest motivation. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about legacy. About raising her child in a world where strength was inherited not by bloodline, but by example. She whispered softly to the life within her, words no one else would hear. You will never know weakness. You will know only power, because your mother never bowed. Outside, Los Angeles pulsed with energy, unaware that within one hotel suite, a queen had declared war. By the time the sun rose, the first cracks in Ethan Walker's empire would appear. And by the time the week ended, his kingdom would be nothing but rubble. Danielle Carter-Walker did not just leave her marriage. She was rewriting the rules of power, and her enemies had no idea how much worse it was about to get. Monday morning broke with a strange stillness across Los Angeles. Newspapers hit doorsteps with headlines that would ripple across boardrooms, stock exchanges, and political circles before the day was out. And at the center of it all was a name whispered with equal parts awe and fear, Ethan Walker. But this wasn't his victory, it was his funeral. In the grand ballroom of the Beverly Hills Hotel, reporters buzzed like hornets, cameras clicking, microphones raised. Danielle Carter-Walker stood at the podium, poised in a tailored ivory suit that shimmered under the chandelier's light. The pearls at her ears glinted as though reflecting a crown only she could see. She hadn't planned a press conference, not in the traditional sense. This was a spectacle, a carefully orchestrated unveiling. She didn't need to shout or beg for attention. She simply stepped into the spotlight, and the room bent toward her. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice calm yet commanding. For years, Ethan Walker presented himself as an icon of innovation, a paragon of financial genius. But illusions, no matter how dazzling, eventually collapse under truth. Gasps and murmurs rippled as she gestured to the screen behind her. With a flick of her hand, a slideshow illuminated the wall, bank statements, wire transfers, hidden accounts in exotic jurisdictions. Each slide another dagger driven into Ethan's facade. These documents, Danielle continued, prove not only a pattern of deception but a deliberate scheme to defraud investors, mislead regulators, and fund a lifestyle built on lies. Every acquisition, every so-called innovation, financed with money stolen through manipulation. A hand shot up from the crowd. Mrs. Walker, are you implying you've had access to this information for years? Danielle's smile was small, enigmatic. Let's just say I believed in documenting my reality. When people show you who they are, you collect the evidence. Laughter broke out, nervous, incredulous, admiring all at once. The media sharks smelled blood, but they also smelled power. Danielle wasn't a scorned wife airing grievances. She was a strategist delivering the death blow to a titan. Far across the city, in the corner office of Walker Global, Ethan's world imploded in real time. He watched the broadcast from a 60-inch screen, his tie loosened, his palms damp. Sophie paced behind him, her face pale, her movements erratic. She can't do this. Sophie snapped, her voice shrill. This isn't legal. Right? Tell me this isn't legal. But Ethan couldn't answer. The footage spoke for itself. Investors were already flooding his phone with furious messages. The SEC had left 2 voicemails, short and damning. We need to talk. Back at the hotel, Danielle closed the presentation with a final, chilling declaration. I will not be silent while others suffer the consequences of one man's greed. Effective immediately, I am cooperating with federal investigators to ensure accountability. This is not the end of a marriage. This is the end of a lie. The cameras flashed wildly as she stepped away from the podium, refusing to take another question. The message was clear. She wasn't there to entertain speculation, she was there to issue judgment. By noon, stock tickers blared the fallout. Walker Global shares plummeted 38% in a single morning, wiping out billions in valuation. Partners withdrew contracts, lenders froze lines of credit. The empire Ethan had built in 7 years unraveled in less than 7 hours. But Danielle wasn't finished. In the privacy of her suite, she hosted a discreet gathering of power brokers, venture capitalists, attorneys, philanthropists, and one congresswoman known for her anti-corruption crusades. They sat around a polished mahogany table, each with a dossier bearing Danielle's crest, a simple crown embossed in gold. Ethan Walker's collapse creates a vacuum, Danielle explained, her tone precise. Vacancies in board seats. Gaps in funding. Opportunities to redirect influence away from corruption and toward integrity. One investor leaned forward, his expression shrewd. And you propose to fill that vacuum? Danielle met his gaze without flinching. Not propose. Declare. The room was silent for a beat, and then nods followed, slow at first, then steady. They weren't merely impressed. They were aligning. Danielle had crossed from exposer to leader. Later that evening, as the city still buzzed with Ethan's downfall, Danielle stood on the balcony, the skyline glittering like jewels at her feet. She held a crystal flute of champagne, though she barely sipped. The battle had been won, but her war wasn't over. Her phone vibrated on the railing. She glanced at the screen, Ethan. She let it ring twice before answering, her voice cool, almost indifferent. You've ruined me, Ethan rasped, his tone raw, stripped of arrogance. Do you know what you've done? Danielle's laugh was low, almost pitying. Ruined you? No, Ethan. You ruined yourself. I simply turned the lights on. You'll pay for this, he hissed. You think you're untouchable. Correction, she interrupted, her words sharp as glass. I don't think it. I know it. Because unlike you, I don't build empires on lies. I build them on truth. And truth, Ethan, doesn't collapse. The line went dead, but Danielle didn't care. His threats meant nothing now. He was a relic gasping in the shadow of her rise. When she turned back inside, Elena entered the suite with a discreet smile. Mrs. Walker, the board from the foundation you co-founded has called. They want to offer you the chair position, effective immediately. Danielle nodded, accepting the news with the grace of someone who had always known this moment would come. The coronation wasn't a crown or a throne. It was this: influence cemented, alliances secured, power reclaimed. Later that night, as she placed a protective hand on her abdomen, Danielle whispered to the life inside her, the heir to her triumph. You will be born into a legacy not of betrayal, but of strength. And when the world asks where your power comes from, the answer will be simple: your mother never bowed. Below her balcony, Los Angeles thrummed with endless movement. But in the quiet of her suite, Danielle knew the truth. This was her city now. And this was only the beginning.